If your child or dependent needs medically necessary ABA services, a common question you may have as a caregiver is, will my insurance cover ABA services? And how much will the services cost? With the variety of different insurance plans available in the marketplace, there is no definitive answer for everyone. The good news is, navigating the world of insurance is simpler once you understand how ABA insurance coverage works. Before we begin, an important disclaimer. This video is strictly for general informational purposes only and is not intended to provide any legal, financial, insurance, or any other advice whatsoever. Please conduct your own research or reach out to appropriate professionals or your insurance provider for your specific needs. Our agenda for today is going to start out with learning more about the common funding sources, followed by medically necessary criteria for ABA coverage, insurance terms to know, explanations on in-network versus out-of-network costs, how to calculate your out-of-pocket expenses for services, and finally, some FAQs. Let's start off with some common funding sources. So the first one is going to be state-funded programs. State-funded programs provide resources and services to individuals with developmental disabilities. There is no charge for determining eligibility, and most services are free. Please visit your state or county's official website for more information on your state-funded programs. Next, school-based services. School-based services are provided by the school district through an individualized education program or a 504 plan. An IEP is an individualized special education plan that helps the child reach their goals. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, which is a national special education law, gives eligible children with disabilities the right to a free, appropriate public education, and an IEP is covered under IDEA. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act is a civil rights law that protects children with disabilities in a school setting against discrimination. It grants a child with disabilities access to accommodations through a 504 plan. For more information on these topics, please visit the Department of Education's website in your state. Next is insurance. Commercial and self-funded health insurance plans, both individual and those offered by your employer, can provide ABA coverage, but coverage may vary. It is important to note the distinction between school-based ABA services, which are educational in nature, and insurance-funded ABA services, which are deemed medically necessary. It is very rare for an insurance provider to authorize and cover ABA services in a school setting, as it requires your healthcare provider to prove that services are medically necessary and can only be rendered in a school setting. Now, finally, onto other government programs, which is health insurance offered by the government, whether it be federal, state, or military, that offers free or highly reduced costs to qualified individuals. So now let's get deeper into the government programs. As we just stated, this type of health insurance is offered by the government, whether federal, state, or military, that offers free or highly reduced costs to qualified individuals. There are three main types of government funding sources. TRICARE, which is health care plans offered to military individuals who are active or retired, along with their family members. Medicaid, public health insurance for low-income adults, children, pregnant women, elderly, and individuals with disabilities. Eligibility is based on the individual's income compared to the federal poverty level, but eligibility and benefits still vary by state. Medicaid is both state and federal, and it can differ by state. For example, Medicaid in California is known as Medi-Cal. And Medicare, a federal program that provides health coverage for individuals 65 and older, or individuals that are under 65 and have a disability, no matter the income. Now on to commercially funded plans. The first type of funding source is a commercially funded plan. Commercially funded plans are funded by non-government organizations and are most common offered by employers. These plans will usually cover all or most of the ABA service costs, and the employee pays the rest. HMOs and PPOs are examples of commercial insurance plans. The next type of funding source is a self-funded health plan. Self-funded health plans are an insurance plan where the employer takes over the financial responsibilities. The employer can tailor the healthcare plan to fit the exact needs of its employees. Please be aware that self funded programs may or may not cover ABA services. If your employer offers a self funded health plan, please contact your employer to determine if ABA services will be covered. Now, on to some common health insurance plans. The two common health insurance plan types we will be discussing today are health maintenance organizations, also known as HMOs, and preferred provider organizations, also known as PPOs. Coverage such as doctors and or services are limited to those who are contracted with the HMO. With an HMO, there were lower monthly premiums, and premiums are the amount you pay for healthcare every month. You have a primary care doctor that coordinates care, so if you wanted to see a specialist, you need a referral. And out of network services are not covered except for emergencies. In a PPO, the health plan is contracted with specific medical providers. This means that there are specific providers that are considered in network. With the PPO, there are higher premiums but more flexibility with healthcare providers. Referrals are not required for specialists, and you have the option to use providers out of network, but costs will be higher. Essentially, PPOs have a standard rate they pay for in network services. If you decide to go out of network, they will still cover the standard rate they pay, but the out of network services may cost more, and you would have to pay the difference. This is also known as balance billing. It is important to know that funding sources will cover costs for ABA services if deemed a medical necessity. But what is medical necessity requirement for ABA services? Simply put, these are your insurance guidelines meant to aid in the decision making process to determine the type and intensity of services a member needs. Such guidelines are typically established by the extensive review of literature on use of ABA to treat functional impairments typically found in individuals with developmental disabilities. Although the criteria vary by the funding source, the most common criterion is an established diagnosis of a developmental disability, such as autism spectrum disorder, by a pediatrician, psychologist, or another licensed medical doctor. It is important to note that some funding sources, such as self funded health plans, may or may not cover ABA services, even if they are considered medically necessary. If you have such a health plan, please contact your employer to determine if ABA services will be covered. Now we will dive into some of the terms used with insurance companies to help you understand your plan more. Plan year is a 12-month period of benefits covered in a healthcare plan. Some healthcare plans go by calendar year, where benefits reset every year on January 1st. And if it is not a plan based on the calendar year, you will need to find out when your coverage renews. This is important not only because your benefits reset with each new plan year, but also because your coverage may change every plan year. Billed amount. This is the predetermined cost for services set by your healthcare provider. The allowed amount is the maximum amount an insurance plan will pay for a covered healthcare service. The allowed amount is determined by your insurance based on a variety of factors and is typically negotiated with your in network healthcare provider as part of their contract. As such, as an in network provider, no matter what they typically charge for the covered service, are bound by contract to discount the service charges and accept the allowed amount as payment in full for the covered service. Out of network providers, on the other hand, are not bound by any such contract, and as such, the difference in cost is typically passed on to the patient, also referred to as balance billing. Discount. The discount is the difference between billed and allowed amount that is discounted if using an in network provider. In other words, if your healthcare provider billed an amount that exceeds the allowed amount determined by your healthcare plan and you are using an in network provider, you are not responsible for such costs. Such a discount is the benefit you receive for choosing to work with an in network provider. On to balance billing. This is the difference between billed and allowed amount the patient is responsible for if using an out of network provider. This means that you will pay the remaining balance of a billed amount that the insurance company did not agree to pay. Some health plans, mostly PPO, will cover a portion of out of network service costs, but the rest is owed by the patient to the healthcare provider. The amount owed varies, as the amount charged for such services by an out of network provider varies by the provider. Now, onto the deductible. In a new plan year, you must first meet your deductible before insurance starts covering the cost for any medical service. If your deductible has not been met, you will have to pay the allowed amount for the services until the deductible is met. Once your deductible has been met, then you pay co-payments or co-insurance until you reach the out-of-pocket maximum for your health plan. The co-payment is the fixed amount you pay for services, usually per visit or per day after the deductible has been met. Note how co-payment is a fixed amount. This will help you differentiate this and co-insurance. If you have met your deductible, the allowed amount is $100 and the co-payment is $20, then you will pay $20 while the insurance will pay $80 for the service. If you have not met your deductible yet, then you will pay the full allowed amount for the visit. Copayment is also per visit or per day, which means if you have multiple services on one day by the same provider, you will only need to pay the copayment once per day for the provider. Coinsurance is the percentage of cost share you pay for services after the deductible has been met. You will pay this amount until you have reached your out of pocket maximum. The out of pocket maximum is the maximum amount you need to pay before insurance pays for 100% of the cost for covered healthcare services. This includes, if you are in network, deductibles, co-payments, and co-insurance. This does not include the monthly premium, which is the amount you pay for maintaining your healthcare services plan each month, services the plan does not cover, services the plan has not authorized, and costs exceeding the allowed amount, which means any costs over the predetermined allowed amount will not count towards the out of pocket maximum. It is important to note that ABA therapy is an intensive therapy typically provided over a few months for multiple hours each week. Furthermore, individuals receiving medically necessary ABA services are also likely to receive other medical services besides ABA therapy. As such, it is likely that most patients will reach their out of pocket maximum limits set by the plan during the plan year, making the out of pocket maximum amount as the maximum cost one would expect to pay out of pocket for all covered medical services received in that plan year. Accumulation is the amount you have paid for services that go towards the deductible and out of pocket maximum. It is important to note that the patient payments accumulation is cumulative across all covered healthcare services received by the patient. This means if a child is receiving ABA services and also visits a doctor and receives other medical services, the patient responsibility payment for each of those services accumulates and counts towards the out of pocket maximum. And once the out of pocket maximum is reached, insurance will pay 100% of the cost for covered services, and the patient is not responsible for any more payments for the rest of the plan year. This chart is intended to explain the cost of working with a provider who is in network versus one who is out of network. Please note that we will not be discussing every section here in the table. Let's say, for example, you are billed $200 for a covered service, and you see that the allowed amount set by your insurance for that service is $100. If you are receiving the service from an in-network provider, the total cost for services, including insurance payment and patient responsibility, will be equal to the allowed amount, which is $100. Further in this example, as you have met your individual deductible but have not met your out-of-pocket maximum for the plan yet, you will need to pay a coinsurance of 20%, which is equal to $20. Let's take the same scenario, except now assume you are working with a provider who is out of network. Since the insurance company only allows up to $100, you will be responsible for the remaining balance on the billed amount, also known as balance billing. The total amount you owe will be $100, balance billing, plus $40 higher coinsurance for the out-of-network provider, which is 40%. While this table is similar to the one in the previous slide, the main difference here is co-payment versus coinsurance. It is common for health plans to have a coinsurance for ABA services, but some plans do have a co-payment instead for services. The co-payment is a fixed amount per visit for covered services, as opposed to coinsurance, which, because it is a percentage, can fluctuate depending on various factors such as length and type of services provided. Taking the same example as before, if the deductible has been met for the plan year, but out-of-pocket maximum has not yet been met, the patient responsibility for services rendered with allowed amount of $100 when using an in-network provider will be $20, while that for an out-of-network provider will be $140. Because the provider is out of network, the patient is responsible for the difference between the billed and allowed amount plus the copayment amount of $40. So the big question is, how much will I pay for ABA services? As mentioned previously, ABA therapy is an intensive therapy typically provided over a few months for multiple hours each week. Furthermore, individuals receiving medically necessary ABA services are also likely to receive other medical services besides ABA therapy. As such, it is likely that most patients will reach their out of pocket maximum limits set by the plan during the plan year, making the out of pocket maximum amount as the maximum cost one would expect to pay out of pocket for all covered medical services received in the plan year. Remember, any other medical services covered by your health plan, which include but are not limited to occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and even your doctor's visits, will also count towards your out of pocket maximum, and as such, this is a shared cost across all covered medical services and not just the cost for ABA services. Even with your health insurance covering a majority of the cost for covered healthcare services, out of pocket expenses can pile up and can be stressful for families. The good news is there are state funded programs that can help cover some of the out of pocket costs for eligible families. For example, in California, regional centers can reimburse eligible families for their copays and deductibles when families pay for behavioral healthcare services through their health insurance. Families may also benefit from getting a secondary coverage through state funded programs such as Medi-Cal in California to help cover some of those out of pocket costs. Please refer to your state or county's website to learn more about such programs. A lot of people have also asked, are some ABA companies more expensive than others? Will I be paying less by going to a different ABA provider? The short answer is not necessarily. Let's understand why this is the case with an example. In this scenario, we have two ABA companies that charge different amounts, but the in-network allowed amount for both companies with the insurance company is the same. As such, regardless of what the agency charges for covered services, due to the contract obligations, patient responsibility for services rendered will be the same, which is $20. In this example, even though ABA Company 1 charges more for services, the amount you owe will be the same regardless of which company you choose. In the next example, we have two ABA companies that charge the same amount for covered services, but the in-network allowed amount for both companies with the insurance company is slightly different. For example, insurance company has negotiated a higher allowed amount with ABA Company 2 as compared to ABA Company 1. As such, when receiving services from ABA Company 1, patient responsibility for services will be $20, while that for ABA Company 2 will be $30. Now, this may seem like ABA Company 2 will be more expensive to work with, and it is when looking at a single service rendered by them, but in the long run, it is likely that most patients will reach their out of pocket maximum limits set by the plan during the plan year, making the out of pocket maximum amount as the maximum cost one would expect to pay out of pocket for all covered medical services received in that plan year, regardless of which company they choose. As such, by choosing ABA Company 2, you may reach your out of pocket maximum amount accumulation for the plan year faster, but your maximum total cost for services will remain the same as ABA Company 1. Thank you for watching our video, How ABA Insurance Coverage Works. We hope that you found this information useful and were able to answer some common questions. If you have any other specific questions you would like answered, please email us at info@behaviornation.com, call us at 844-262-8466, or contact us on our website at www.behaviornation.com.